And Russell. We've worked with you for years, Russell. When did you first work with Macmillan, dare I ask? What was the year? Are you there? Are you there?
Well, you
I
haven't
am there.
introduced him yet.
There you
There we
are.
go.
Oh, blimey. Hello, Russell.
Hi, good to see you both. Hi.
Good to see you too, mate. When, dare I ask, what was the year? What year, roughly, did you first start working with Macmillan?
Oh God, I mean, I probably back in the 1990s, towards the end of the 1990s, I started doing quite a lot of teacher training for Macmillan in Spain when I was living there.
Wow.
And
So
then I went on
Oasis's first stint.
Oh, right, okay.
Amazing. Oh, great. Well, it's great to have you back, Russell. As always, you are sort of the digital guru in ELT, and you're and I hope this comes across in the right way, but an absolute go-to for advice on digitalia in ELT.
That's great to know. Good.
You've got great. Well, you've got 80,000 followers. I don't need to tell you this, but you've got 80,000 plus subscribers on YouTube channel. You run teachertrainingvideos.com.
Yep.
And you are an educator on technology, blended learning, AI, digital stuff. ELT digital. Is that enough? Is that
that's very true. I mean, a lot of the technologies these days pan across all languages as well. So many of the technologies we can use them for teaching all sorts of languages, not just English. But yeah, definitely.
Great. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. So the way this is going to work, I'm just going to let everyone else know. So the way we're going to run things today is Russell's got, as you know, 5 areas that we're going to discuss, sort of 5 key principles, pieces of advice that he's going to share. And he's going to share a piece of advice, and then we'll chat about it. And you can ask, you can comment, you can say anything you like throughout that, and we'll respond to what you're saying in the chat box. So without further ado, Russell.
I think before the advice, we have an important question.
Asking.
Yep.
Russell, digital person, as we've mentioned before, what is your current top favorite, most awesome, wonderful digital thing that you use?
The one.
The one. Great question. Yeah, I mean, there is one actually, because I'm learning Polish at the moment, and I come across this website called, and it's also completely free, and you don't even need to sign in, so it makes it really easy. It's called naturalreaders.com. And you can take any text. I'll quickly show you in a minute, just very quickly. You can take any text, you can paste it in, and you can press a button, and it will be read out with an almost perfect native-like accent. Now, if you're learning English, for example, you could have American English, Australian English, Welsh English. You can get all the varieties of English. So you could really use this to expose yourself to lots of different English accents. It's also brilliant for pronunciation, of course. But I like it because I'm studying Polish at the moment. And in Polish, what we can do, or I can do this in any language, is literally take any text that I want to read in Polish, paste it in, click the button, and it will be read out. And so I can listen and read at the same time. And for me, that is a massive game changer. And also in Polish, you get really tricky words. So if I want to focus on individual words, I can just write them in, click the button, and it will produce, it will reproduce the words for me. I can even choose different voices. So in each, for example, in English, you might have 10 different voices. Would you like to see it? Shall I just give you a super quick demo? Because it really is, yeah. So
just while you bring it up, Russell, quick question.
Yeah.
So obviously the world is becoming sort of very in terms of how we work. You have people in Poland working with people in Spain, and people in Spain working with people in China. Could you put a text up there and say, I want this read in English with someone with a Japanese accent, how a Japanese person would say this in English?
That is actually possible as well with this technology. That is also possible. It's a great question, because you can do that as well. So you could literally paste in a text and then choose the French, and it will actually read that text out with a French accent. Amazing. That is actually possible. Now, I have to admit, I've not done that. Hopefully you can see it on the screen now. Okay. Yeah. Naturalreaders.com. You don't even need to sign in, just go straight to the website. And if I was to grab just a little bit of text, say, from my website, just to demonstrate this really quickly. So I'm just going to grab this little bit of profile text here, copy that. I'm going to jump back. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste that text in. Now I have to go up to the top here, and I'm going to choose English, and we'll start with William from Australia, and I'll click here. Okay, and hopefully when I click the button now, and it just makes sure that I am screen sharing the audio, and I am, so that should be no problem at all. If I click this now, tell me if not, This is William reading out my text. Here we go.
Russell Stannard is a multi-award-winning educational technologist and founder of www.teachertrainingvideos.com. He has more than 80,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel.
Now, let's imagine, for example, that we
Very
wanted to hear
cool.
it with a different accent. Okay, now, first of all, I just want you to notice the number of languages. So, you can use this whether you're learning Spanish, French, German, whatever. Look at that. It's just absolutely incredible. Okay, so
Brilliant.
obviously, for me, it's wonderful because there's Polish. But if we come back to the English, let's say I want to switch over now and use Sonia. Okay, so let's go over to Sonia. Let's try a little trick with Sonia. So I'm going to click on Sonia. I'm going to close that down and I'm just going to write a few words. I'm going to write photo. I'm going to write photography. Okay. I'm going to write photograph because obviously the stress changes. Let's see how Sonia copes with the changing stress in these words and whether she can do it. So let's listen to Sonia. And I often do this. I'm not a big advocate of practicing individual words on their own, but sometimes you really do need to.
Yeah.
So let's just have a quick click.
Photo, photography, photograph.
Absolutely fantastic. So just as a
Brilliant.
finishing
Very nice.
thing, if I was to, let's see how it works if we were to go over to a French accent and listen to the English being read out by Celeste. Now, does that work? Now, I have to say, Will, I've never tried this. So here we go.
Photo, photographie, photographe.
So in
Very
theory, you could actually
nice.
do that as well. Okay, I really would recommend that as
Very
let me
cool.
stop sharing and come back. I really would recommend that as a wonderful website. Really
Thanks, Russell. Good stuff. Okay, nice. Let's crack on. So, Russell, over to you for your first what are we calling them? Principles. Let's call it a principle. Go for it, Harry. Go for it, Russell.
Okay, lovely. I'm going to tell a quick story before I share something on the screen, okay? And that is, I was studying Polish and I went to a school in Krakow and we started the course. And one thing that the teacher did, they didn't use a lot of technology in the lesson, but what they did do is the course book that we were using had a platform that went along with it. And this really opened my eyes up to these platforms because, see, if you've got a platform, everything's on there, yeah? So you're studying in the class using the book, then you go home and the teacher can set all the homework for you to do, all the activities for you to do. You can go back home that evening. Everything's connected to what you've been doing in the book. You open up the platform, you've got video, you've got audio, you've got all sorts. You can see the homework you've got to do. You can do the homework, you can do extra work. And this just completely opened my eyes up to the connectivity between the two things, between the course book and these platforms. Now, up until then, I hadn't really looked into these platforms in a lot of detail, but I must admit, from that moment on, I really started to fall in love with these platforms and think, wow, that's all there. All that content's there for you. It can really make your life easy. And you don't have to do anything as a teacher. So that would really be my first piece of advice. And I'm just going to quickly jump onto
What level are you in Polish, Russell?
Now I'm probably like a sort of an intermediate level, but at the time, I'm going to have to open up because I just closed that down. So to open it up again, bring it onto the screen. So my first point would be, and let me just go full screen there, would be start with the obvious. Start with the obvious thing because, these technologies are available and it really is, it really is a game changer for you. So just to think
Russell,
about...
Russell, you're being asked to do a little dance. Can you say something in Polish?
Tak, mówię po polsku bardzo dobrze teraz, bo mieszkam tutaj i więc to normalnie krok po kroku uczy się mówić po polsku, naprawdę. To ciężki, naprawdę jest trudny język, ale mówię teraz. Is that okay?
Were you just talking about, I'm going to guess just by the way you were saying, were you talking about your Polish?
Yeah, I was talking about the fact that I can speak Polish because obviously I live here, have to really now, and the fact that it's a really difficult language, but step by step I'm learning.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, let's see. What were you going to share your screen, Russell, with something?
Can you not see my screen? I was hoping it was being shared.
I can't see it
right,
yet.
okay, let's have a look. Something odd is going on there. Let's have a quick look here. I'm not sure why. I'm going to come back in. I should be sharing my screen. Let me just have a quick look and see why I'm not. Let's do it again then. Share. Okay, let's open up the presentation. Hopefully now that is come on.
Harry's just done it. Harry's just done it.
Okay, can you see that now?
I did magic with my hands. I didn't touch anything.
Okay, lovely. All right. So Why do I like these technologies? Well, if I was a teacher, and obviously these days I'm a teacher trainer, it's just it's a one login. That you set your class up, and
sorry, just remind us, Russell, which technology are we talking about here?
We're talking about the platforms that go along with the course books. Okay. So each course book normally has a platform that goes along with it. So in my case, I was using a platform, a course book in Poland, and there was a platform, and it supported all the learning that was taking place in the classroom. So it meant I could go home at night and just log in once, and everything was there for me. There was a whole range of materials, and I know the platforms at Macmillan also do the same thing. So these platforms, they offer a range of materials. All the content is prepared, so the teacher doesn't have to do any work. There's audio, there's video, there's exercises, etc. Everything's connected to the book. So that really makes it nice, because I think connecting learning is really important. From the student's point of view, of course, they've got immediate feedback. So if they do any activities, then they'll get feedback on their activities as well. And of course, there's extra materials. This is one of the things I really liked. I'm living in Poland. I really want to learn the language, and so I'm quite motivated. And so I could go back, and maybe we'd learnt the present simple that day in class, or we'd looked at some vocabulary or a particular topic, and I could do extra work on it, because often these course books, they offer additional material as well. Obviously, it's really easy to set the homework, and that's a really nice thing for teachers. They can set a homework, and of course, it tracks everything. So the teacher can sort of wake up and our teacher was doing this, was then coming back into class with us and saying, okay, everyone's done the homework, or most of you have done the homework. Let's just go for a few problems. So it's really good in terms of kind of formative assessment, because the teacher can be checking understanding. And it really kind of, over the course of running, I did a month's course. I got more and more proficient at using this technology, and the teacher was using it on a regular basis. Now, it was quite interesting. The teacher wasn't really using a lot of technology in the class. We used quite a lot of video, but we didn't necessarily use a lot of technology in the classroom. But obviously we were using this platform for the homework. And it just really dawned on me how useful these technologies are. Now, I've just sort of got a couple of, obviously there is one thing to really keep in mind if you decide to use these platforms, and that is there is an investment that you've got to make at the beginning to learn to use it, to get an understanding of how you get your students to log in, where all the material is, how you set the homework, how you set exercises for students to do. I mean, as you get more confident, you could even bring the platform into the lessons as well, okay? Because don't forget, the content is connected to whatever book you're using. And I think the other big challenge is, as well as learning to use the platform, is the fact that you've got to get the teachers on board. You've also got to get the students on board as well. Okay, so that really is a bit of a process, particularly at the start.
How long are we talking, Russell? I mean, that's okay, but we have got so we've got a range of teachers.
Yeah,
got teachers who not struggle to use YouTube, but there'll be teachers that don't really use very much even in their personal lives, all the way to the end with someone who's as competent, if not more than even you, who just lives for digital. How long will it take for the average teacher to sort of log on themselves, get their students onboarded, and get everyone kind of on the same page in terms of using the basics of the platform?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I would say it's probably somewhere in an initial investment of about 2 or 3 hours to just get familiar with the platform. There are lots of help videos on YouTube, for example, for the Macmillan platform. And, you can make use of those videos just to get familiar with how it works. And I think there's a bit of a learning curve. In other words, once you start working with the platform, you get more and more confident with it. You'll probably end up doing more ambitious things. Hence the reason I kind of drew the arrow, the arrow that I chose here. It's sort of going up, and then maybe you've got to do a little bit more work, and then up again, and you'll slowly build up your confidence. So I think the way that you often start with the platform and the way you end up using it will be actually quite different. But what I do think is that this is a great investment, because you're going to get a big payback for the initial investment you make. And of course, if you use the same course book for 3 or 4 years, then that's even better, because then of course you can come back and use the platform again and again and again. So for me, that would be my starting point. I would really say start with the obvious.
Okay.
I did kind of just draw, I just took a couple of screenshots to sort of show you, you can log in and you can you literally just click on the button if you want to add the homework. So you log into your class and then you choose the homework that you want to add. And, you can look here, I can get all the different exercises and I can just click and add on the specific exercise that I want my students to do if you want them to do it for homework. And that, the process, once you've learned this, once you've got this under your belt, then of course it's going to make life very, very easy for you in terms of setting homework. And of course, when the students do the activities, all of that is tracked. Okay, so you've got a really good indication of what the students get a notification, which is really useful. So when you set homework, then you get notification. The teachers get notifications also of when the homework's been completed. Okay. And then, of course, you can actually go through and log into a particular class and see what activities have been completed. And obviously, you can see what marks the students got. This is exactly what my teacher was doing when I was learning Polish. They weren't going through the exercises per se, but what they were doing was saying, well, look, you've done the homework, or there's a couple of you who haven't. These are some of the problems I've come across, or this is where we need to focus our attention today. So it's really, really good as a formative assessment tool. It does take a bit of initial work. One thing that we did as well, on the very first week that course, we took out a whole session to train the students how to use the platform. Mm-hmm. So we actually had a training session ourselves on how the platform works. And I think that's also really, really important because it meant, of course, that the students got on board quite quickly because we knew how, and that was the first time that had ever happened to me as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but you're talking about a couple of hours investment there at the beginning, sometimes less, sometimes more. But just to set people's mind at ease, that's not that's not extra time you need to find. How can that time, with that experience now in place, be compensated for? How can you get that time back?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's the key thing, because I think you've got to remember that all the content is there. So you're not making any lessons. You're not even searching for videos on YouTube or looking for interesting audio or making videos or going to ChatGPT to produce a text. The content is already available to you. And I think the other thing, and I know we'll be talking about this a little bit later, is that, the art of blended learning really is the connection. Okay, it's all about how you connect the class to the homework and to the activities you do. And what you're really talking about is a kind of idea of 1 + 1 = more than 2. In other words, the mixture of the classroom activities plus the homework, if done well, can lead to much more engaging learning. Now, if you've got a platform that's got content that is related to everything that's in the course book and related to what you're doing in the classroom, I think it can really, really work. I think that it really can facilitate blended learning because it's all there for you. So I think in the long run, it can be a really big time saver.
I think even when it comes to just those moments in class where, you traditionally you go in, okay, everyone, have you done your homework? Okay, open your books, let's correct our homework. Number one, that's not that useful, let's be honest. That's 10 minutes of your class that you've wasted, because whether they've done it or not, they're going to, I got 7 out of 10, I got 6 out of 10. You don't know what they're getting right or wrong. So you immediately save that 10 minutes for a start. And it's much more useful what you're doing because you can see where they've gone wrong. You can see which students are doing their homework perhaps a little more infrequently than others.
You're very true.
And something I've been having a chat with a few of the wonderful folks who are here over in the chat box. And a few of them said it was really easy to get used to the platform. Fabian said that it took about 15 minutes to get used to it.
There we are.
And Fabian said they're an intermediate skilled user. So, it's a small investment to reap big rewards by the sound of it.
I think it's pretty rare nowadays that you'd find, not rare, I mean, it's rare for me to find a new platform or a new piece of technology, software, or a website or a web app or something, or even an app that hasn't got the usability, the user experience, the UX kind of at the front and center of that interface that you're working with. They're so they're so aware that that's got to be tip top for
Yeah.
every platform for everyone.
Yeah.
It's you go to any platform for any course book, and we're not just talking about Macmillan education. We're talking about all of them basically.
Yeah.
They're all just that's front and center. It's got to be easy to use. But Russell, can I ask you though, because when we know at Macmillan, we know that a lot of people still are not using these digital platforms, not just us, everywhere. People are just not really, a lot of people still are not investing any time into logging on, even, or maybe they log on and then they sort of just, okay, I've done that. I've ticked that box for my manager or something, and then they never visit it again. Why is that happening, do you think?
Well, I guess that's a really interesting question. It's a much broader question. I think it is to do with a kind of a more getting a better, a different vision of learning. Where is learning going? I mean, my feeling about learning, and we'll be talking a little bit about this at the moment, is that really the key, I always call it the elephant in the room. See, language learning takes place outside of the classroom, really, not in the class. The teacher is really important. I have a teacher in Polish, yeah, and she helps me enormously. But of course, it's all the extra time that I spend at home doing homework, doing additional exercises. And I think sometimes teachers misunderstand this a little bit. They're focusing too much on the classroom. Really, in the long run, if we can open up these platforms to our students and make them aware of what's available, we're really opening up a world to them. Now, that can go beyond just the platforms. That's also things like YouTube and natural readers that I've showed you today. So I think it does require a bit of a mindset shift in the way that we're thinking about where technology plays a role. I'm not always sure personally of how big a role it has to play in the classroom. Really, for me, the technology is about extending the learning beyond the classroom, because language learning ultimately takes place outside the classroom. I mean, I'm on my 4th language now, and I've learned to speak Spanish and French and Polish and English, and really, I know that at the end of the day, it was all the hard work that I did, reading readers, listening to podcasts, listening to YouTube videos, going to the country. That's really where I learned the language, despite the fact that for all those languages, I had teachers.
But just for the sake of debate, I do like a little debate on don't we, Hazza?
We do indeed.
For the sake of debate, though, the classroom is when you're speaking to other people.
Absolutely. And I think the classroom is really important. And the classroom is an opportunity to practice and build confidence and be guided, because I think the teacher's role very much is to kind of, obviously teachers have learned a language, particularly with English, many people are learning their second language for the first time. Okay. So they do need that guidance and support, and the teacher can provide it. Hence the reason I've always been a big fan of non-native teachers, because the non-native teachers have gone through the experience of learning English as a foreign language. And I think in many ways that can be a really positive thing. I just think that we need to shift our role a little bit, our mindset a little bit more, to thinking about our job. Yes, it is to teach the language, but more than that, it's actually to help our students to learn how to learn and how to learn languages. And I think that's where the platform can play a role. And I think that's where teachers maybe, perhaps why they're a bit reticent about using one of these technologies, because maybe they don't quite have that vision.
Okay. Thanks, Russell. Harry, did you want to say anything before we moved on?
I think we can move on to point number 2, because I could stay on point number 1 all day long, to be honest.
Right, let's jump over. I'll go back to screen sharing the PowerPoint, okay? And I'm just going to literally just jump on one slide. So hopefully you can see this, okay? And there it is. Make sure the students know the technology. I mean, we've already touched on this, really, but see, if it doesn't, because it does require obviously to get the teachers on board and get the teachers engaged in the whole process. But then the same thing again, it also requires that we get the students on board. For me, it was really, I was really surprised that this school took out a lesson, an hour and a half that was, of us really working through setting different exercises for us, getting us logged on so that we were all really competent. But of course, it meant that not everyone, as Will mentioned, but most of the students were doing the exercises in the evening, because we all knew how to use the technology. So it's really important that the students are on. We call this onboarding, getting the students really familiar with the technology so that they too can engage with it. And I think that's just really, really important. I've only got the one slide there, guys. I don't know if you've got any questions.
I've got a question.
Yeah, please.
A big question, this one for me.
Yeah.
So quite often when it comes to, getting people online and stuff, we can have that hour in the classroom or the hour and a half, or the 45 minutes, or however long we have in the classroom. Do you think that offering a tutorial to parents might also be a good idea?
I think that's a really clever question. And I think, yes, the answer is I would agree with that. And I'll tell you why, because you probably know yourself, Harry, in some countries, the role of parents as, towards technology has been so negative that it's actually influenced policy. So we do need to win the parents over, because there are particular countries that I know I've worked in where, there is a real reticence to use technology and a real suspicion of technology. And so I think that could be also really interesting if we were to do that and get the parents on board if we can. I remember a product called Edmodo, for example. I know it doesn't exist anymore, but they had a parent code so that the parents could log in and see what their students were doing. I thought that was quite interesting.
That's a clever idea.
Yeah, yeah.
But we're only talking about young learners, and we're not talking about adult learners, parents.
Yeah. Obviously, yeah. No, that wouldn't be appropriate, obviously.
Could have my
If you got my parents
on my homework. Wouldn't want to get in trouble. But yeah, I just think that involving the parents in it, it can also encourage the students to actually do the work.
I agree.
If they know their parents are there, but also their parents can help. I know during the pandemic, I was working with a lot of teachers on on these platforms where, trying to set up classes and so on and so forth. And after teaching the teachers, my first thing to say was, look, you need to teach the parents. You can't just rely on, a 13-year-old student to know and to do this, because yes, a 13-year-old student is probably far more digitally aware than I am with, editing videos and figuring out how to use Google Maps on the screen on a car. But when it comes to logging in and doing their homework, they don't have that same kind of connection. So I don't know, getting parents involved, I think, would be useful.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the studies about digital divide prove that. So where children have got parents at home that can support them with the technology and use of technology, they access it more. So the digital part of the digital divide is a lot to do with the actual education that the parents have got and their attitude towards technology. So yeah, I totally agree with you, Harry.
Especially when we're talking about young learners. I've got a 5-year-old, and in reception he was given technology. We had something called mathletics, right, and then number bots. I think it was something like number bots. You can imagine what they're all about. It's pretty good, pretty sort of gamified. It's good fun. He was really getting into it. And I'm just looking back and looking at the situation I had with him, going through that with him and helping him along. Yeah. And we probably did that for a few hours over the course of a couple of terms. That's a lot of extra learning we're getting out of that by getting the students au fait with using technology at that age. Not too much, in my opinion, but a little bit, just getting them used to the fact that these things exist. He had a lot of fun and he was learning. He was definitely improving his maths. And I got that time with him. I could see where he was. I could help him. I was a teacher, so I can do that. A lot of us are, a lot of the teachers in this room also are parents. And there's just so much opportunity there to sort of just balloon the opportunities for learning to happen.
Yeah.
I think it's the using technology for good side of things, rather than, you're not handing your kid an iPad because you can't really be bothered to do anything. You want them to be quiet. You're using the technology for good. And when it comes to these platforms, this isn't, doom scrolling on TikTok for 6 hours at night. This is doing your homework.
Very targeted, very specific, with a clear objective in mind. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's kind of a nice compromise, isn't it? Because we know that there's some sort of software candy out there, and we kind of need to, and it's just quite good to make sure that candy is also teaching them something. Okay, Russell, are we ready for part 3?
Okay, let's just flick through, because I've only got, again, one slide for this one. So the next one is consistent and persistent. And I've got a little story to tell about this.
Okay. Stories. Do like a good story.
Especially
from you, Russell.
So obviously, when I was teaching, now I'm only a teacher trainer, but I've actually taught Spanish as well. I've taught English and Spanish. When I returned to England, did my master's degree in technology, I was teaching I was teaching Spanish, and obviously I was very enthusiastic to start to get my students to use some of these technologies. There was a lot of reluctance in the class, and this is honest truth. I'd set up an activity using a very simple, in fact, I think it's still around, Vocaroo. It's a kind of audio recording tool where you can just record audio and share the link, and then people can listen to it. It's very, very easy to use. So I set up an activity in the class where we even practice and we prepared that the students were going to record their presentations for homework. And I think there were 15 people in the class. And the first time I did this, one person in the class did
That
it.
is a success, mate.
Right?
That is success.
Okay, and that is honest truth. One person did it. So I knew that this was a great idea. I knew that getting my students to prepare and think about the recordings in the lesson with me and work around the vocabulary and the language and even perhaps even practice and then getting them to do the recordings at home, that was a good thing. It was going to get more speaking out of them because English students learning foreign languages are often very, very reluctant to speak. So what did I do? Well, I played his recording in the class and I went through it and I asked him, I remember his name, it was Roy. Roy, how did it go? Did you like it? Blah, blah, blah. Well, I carried on with that idea because I knew that I was doing the right thing for the students and I really believed it was going to help them. And slowly I got them on board. Now, I can't ever say I got everyone on board. But by the end, about 12 or 13 students were doing these recordings and we were doing them sort of like once every 2 or 3 weeks. And I was preparing them. Obviously, they were going to be doing an exam at the end, helping them to be prepared for their oral exam. And so I stuck at it because I believed it was the right thing. And well, why did I believe that? Well, because obviously I'm a teacher. I've done courses. I understand a bit about language learning. I've learned a few languages myself. And so I could see that this was going to be beneficial to my students. And I think we've got to be like that sometimes. Be consistent. So if you're going to do something like use the platform, use it on a regular basis, you don't have to go mad, but use it consistently. Make sure the students understand that this is an integral part of the lesson and also be persistent. Don't give up. If you really think something is going to be beneficial to your students, it's going to help them with their language learning, then persist. Because normally you're the one that's probably in the better position to understand what your students need. Not always, of course. We've always got to keep in mind what students think and how they feel comfortable in their learning styles. But we are the language learners, and I think we shouldn't ever forget that.
Absolutely. Harry, I've got some. You go, Harry. You go.
No. You go, Will. Go on. You go.
I was going to say that this goes well beyond digital. Use, doesn't it? This is not just about using technology in class, it's about everything. And I don't think we need to preach to any teachers here that routine means a lot in the classroom, and repeating certain structures in the class just really compounds the learning and the environment and the support and the comfort and the security that the students feel in class with repeating certain structures and making sure that we don't. But I think the main difference with digital is that we as teachers don't give up if it doesn't sort of spark straight away, because there's things like doing a warmer, just kind of easy just to keep that going. It makes sense to do a warmer in every class and to do some kind of reflection at the end of the class. That's relatively simple, just to sort of, we're doing that now. Digital, I suppose, is quite easy to give up because you've got to be pretty proactive with going in there and doing it yourself and deciding what you're going to do before the class and that sort of thing. You've got to really sell yourself into this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really true. I mean, I think that comes back to the point I was trying to make earlier about a slightly different vision of our role in the classroom, a bit more of understanding of, because then if you really believe that, I've always been focused on the whole thing about kind of helping my students to become more effective learners, because I was a terrible language learner when I was younger. And I had to sort of learn to learn language learning, yeah? And so through that process, I'm very aware that that's what I need to do a lot for my students. So when I'm making these decisions about the technologies that I'm going to use in the class, often it's with that vision. That's why I like natural readers, for example. That would be the sort of technology I would introduce to my students, maybe do an activity where I got the students to listen to different people speaking and guess what the accent was. Was that American English, etc. But really my vision there would be, look, I want you guys to start using this technology because you could be at home reading and listening to any text you want to. So I often have a vision of that when I do use technology in the class, it's really I'm planting seeds hoping that in the future that might impact on what they do outside of the class when I'm not there.
For me, the one of the wonderful things about it now, you know Spain pretty well, Russell. I'm here in Spain.
Lucky
I have a
man.
child who is 11, and she has like mountains and mountains of homework. And like the idea of the platform for me is fantastic, and it sounds really bizarre, but when she has a teacher who is being consistent and persistently sending homework on the platform, it's much better for her back because she doesn't have to carry endless books on her back. You know, it's a 20-minute walk to school, you know, and if she's got 7 textbooks in her bag, like that's not particularly great. So when she does have that, it's one teacher anyway who has been particularly persistent with it. It's fantastic physically as well as mentally.
Wow, Harry, I never thought of that. What a brilliant point. Really, I hadn't thought of that at all. And it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. Yeah, really, really good point.
Okay, let's go for the point. We're on point number 4 now, our penultimate.
Yeah, we're going to move on to point. Okay, I couldn't find the right image for this, but this is really important, and at least it's kind of conveys it. I was looking this morning.
Russell, what are you talking about? You found the image. That's the image.
So, this is really important, and this is something that I've definitely seen in my own teaching and learning, okay? And something that, you know, I run lots of different teacher training courses and stuff like that. And, you know, sometimes teachers want to dive in. They always, oh, what, you know, no, start really small. It's just like that example I gave you earlier with Vocaroo. And, you know, it built up into something more sophisticated as the course went on. And I got to understand more about how I can connect what I was doing in the classroom in preparation for getting the students to do the recordings at home. And then even what we were going to do with the recordings afterwards to get feedback. So it built up over time. It became more and more significant. And I think that's very much the way I feel about technology. Start small because you want to start with something that you're sure about, that you can definitely do. And your confidence will build. Once you dive in there and you start working with these technologies, your confidence builds. And I think the big transformation that you go through is maybe at the beginning, you might be sort of doing your class and doing your homework. And I think there comes a point, and this is definitely where I was towards the end of my teaching using technology before I sort of, you know, become a trainer. And that was connecting the two in really special ways. So that often my students were doing an activity for homework that would lead in to almost the first activity that we would do in the class. It was almost like a diving board. So the connection between the two parts of the class become very strong. And I think that happens if you build up your skill set around the technology. I think a part of that also is as well, it's much better to get familiar with a few technologies and learn them really well. All right, because I think then you get more creative with them and you see better ways of connecting them. And what teachers tend to do is have lots of recipes. You know, it always happens to me when I do training and they say, oh, I know Wordwall, I know Padlet, I know this. And then I say, right, I'm going to show you this with it. And they say, oh, so I didn't realize it could do that. So I think this happens a lot. So my, you know, would be start small, start with what you know, develop it over time, and build around a few key technologies that really can impact on our teaching and, of course, our students' learning.
Okay, so talking about them then. So what about, how did you do it? What did you do? So you've got the platform for the course, perhaps that's maybe the core. What sort of technologies would you recommend people use to supplement that?
Well, I think one of the things that I would definitely be looking at is what, you know, is those tools that lead to greater autonomy. So I'm always looking at introducing technologies into my lesson through activities so that students become aware of them, but really with the vision that that could lead to them suddenly using that technology on their own. For example, Quizlet. For example, how Google Translate works, because it actually does a lot more than people think. For example, having really good knowledge of YouTube, how to search for videos with subtitles, how to slow videos down, how to search with videos that are only 3 or 4 minutes long, how to take the videos and take the transcripts from them. Okay, all those little details, and then integrating that into your teaching and learning can lead to your students being able to do these things on their own. Now, I see this a lot at the moment with myself learning Polish, yeah, because obviously I can have a lesson and then I, because of my knowledge, can sort of go off afterwards and search for videos connecting what we've done, find some grammar activities, and I can do it all because I've got I call them superpowers. And so I think we need to actually get that. That's my vision for how the role of technology in the classroom. It's not, I'm a big fan of a traditional class, students working in pairs and groups. They're there. They're sitting together. We don't need to put technologies in the way. I really don't use a lot of technology in my lessons. Certainly outside the class I do, but not in the class. But where technology can be useful in the class is if it's going to empower our students in terms of their own autonomous learning, because that's my vision. I'm kind of direct them in that way. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's certainly the way that I was thinking about my teaching and learning as when I was a teacher.
Absolutely.
I think this idea of starting small is super important, because we've seen with this the fairly recent seeming induction of AI, everyone's gone, right, I need to know all of it. I need to know everything. And you suddenly look and there's 500 new AI tools, and everyone's like, well, I've got to use all of them now, because that's what everyone's talking about. And it's a great way to lead yourself to burnout if you try and learn everything instantly. Like, you can't teach your students everything instantly. You can't go from the present simple to the third conditional. So why would you expect to be able to go from from knowing nothing to do with AI to knowing absolutely everything? So starting small is fantastic, which is a great way. You can start small, as you mentioned, with the platform that you have. Start with classwork, homework, then look at the other aspects of it. But yeah, like you say, YouTube, like, who knows how to actually use YouTube? How deep is the knowledge of YouTube?
Yeah.
Is it just, I type in 3 words, it doesn't come up, so I give up? Well, pretty much.
I think that's such a good point about YouTube. I think also just other software like that, the people taking it from their perspective again, the people that make the software, so Meta for the most part, isn't it? It's Meta that make all of them. But they have got the user in mind the entire time. And I think most of the time, if you go there and you're thinking, oh, it'd be great if I could do this, odds are millions of people have wanted to do that already as well. And there's probably some kind of pretty nifty solution on those softwares that you're using anyway. So I think that's a really good piece of advice. I think don't be too fast to try to find another software that you again are not familiar with, and just sort of make sure that it's not already there on whatever software you've decided to use up until then.
Well, that's absolutely right. Really true. Really true.
You mentioned Padlet as well. I think people don't quite realize the immense potential of Padlet. Like, it's insane. It's vast. But people basically think it's a whiteboard.
Yeah, Harry, couldn't agree more. It's one of with the AI that I've introduced, and I don't know if you've seen any of the videos that I've been making, because I did a really deep dive. I got invited along to a special webinar and I was trained up in using Padlet. They've added in this AI. I was like, whoa. So I've been putting out a lot of videos on Padlet because it would definitely up there in my top 5. I would say if there's a technology I would suggest that teachers use outside of the platform that goes with the course book, Padlet would definitely be one of them, because it does so many things.
Anyone who's unfamiliar with Padlet, what does it do? What's its main purpose?
Padlet is an electronic corkboard, but what you can share on that corkboard could be anything. So it could be audio. So, students can just click a button and record, and then that goes, put their name there. So right. You can share opinions, but students can write up on it. Students can there's something called Magic Draw now. This is fantastic for doing descriptions, because you can say, you can practice doing descriptions, and then students go onto Padlet, they write in a description, click I can't draw, and Padlet will will work out the description and draw the appropriate picture. So that can be really interesting activity, because suddenly you've got all these lovely pictures on the screen.
Yeah. Amazing.
You can moderate everything if you're worried about your students doing something inappropriate. So you can always come on afterwards and say yes, and no if there's something you don't like. So you've got loads of control. It's one of the technologies that made the biggest jump when the AI was introduced. It really is maybe the most impressive technology in terms of what the AI has done for it. It really is a very good tool.
We've had a question actually, and they've asked, who is this? Anna. Thanks, Anna, for the question. Could you please recommend a website or technology for practicing writing and then getting feedback that isn't Cambridge's Write and Improve or Grammarly?
Okay, there is one actually. It's called AGO AI. AGO AI.
Can you
So
spell that? Can I
yeah,
just
that's
put it in the box?
EIGO. AGO, which AGO. Yeah,
E-I-G-O.
yeah, ago.ai. That technology, and it's actually got a free option as well. You can, it kind of is very structured. It does a series of activities. It starts with a reading, and then you do some vocabulary, and the final activity is to do a writing activity, and it gives you immediate feedback on it. Very
Brilliant.
interesting. Very interesting.
Keep those questions coming, guys. We have got a bit of a guru in the room here. So if you've got
I
other
will be
questions
looking at
about
that one.
tools, just put them out there.
I will be looking at that one right after this.
Okay, we haven't got long. We got one final point, Russell. What are we finishing with?
Well, I think really the one that, in a way, subliminally, we've been mentioning all the time. Yeah, learning has changed. Autonomy is the goal. I mean, I might be slightly exaggerating when I say autonomy is the goal. The goal is really language learning, but I think a big part of language learning, particularly as we get to higher levels, okay? And I definitely don't want to denigrate the role of the teacher. You know, I still feel a teacher. I mean, you know, even in Spanish, and I'm a fluent Spanish speaker, I have a teacher. I have to have one lesson a week online. Yeah. You know, really, if we can empower our students, we're living. I remember a time when I first started teaching English in 1987 on the island of Crete, and there was literally nothing for the students but the course book and the workbook. I mean, you had the odd student that might have satellite television and that exposure to English through that. And, you know, even the newspaper used to arrive about 3 days late. I never used to know the Chelsea results until 3 days after the match. It was terrible. And so, you know, there was hardly any materials around at all. That is, for me, the big change that has taken place. There is a world out there of opportunity for students to study on their own. And it really does not impact on the role of the teacher in the classroom. It's because at the end of the day, that is where the language learning takes place. It's outside the class, and anything we can do to help them, fantastic. It doesn't change the role that the teacher can still play in class to support, to guide, to direct the students, to build their confidence, etc. But I think ultimately our goal, particularly with the use of technology, is to foster language learning or foster autonomy.
Absolutely, Russell. I mean, that's always been the goal. And I think digital learning is. I mean, it is a way also to access students, isn't it? To access young learners who clearly really like using technology, and there's not really a question there of whether it's going to be something they're going to want to try, because if it's something if they can do their homework while using their phone, if they're a teenager, for example, I can imagine that's going to go down pretty well.
Yeah.
There's such a, as you mentioned, there's such a wealth of authentic materials as well. You know, even one of my favorite ever students, Julian. Obviously, we don't have favorites. We're teachers. We treat everybody equally. But I had a student who was, I think he was about 13 when he joined my FCE class 8 or 9 years ago.
FCE.
Yeah.
Haven't heard it called that for years.
Oh, you know, sorry. First, my B2 certificate class. And like he was wonderful. He was an absolute character, but he was an incredibly autonomous learner because he was into gaming, and everybody that played Call of Duty he played in English. And there was that kind of that motivation for him was he wanted to be able to scream at people in English. And it just made such a huge difference. And it became, you know, his goal was to be really good at playing COD in English. So he would look for the different ways that he could learn, he could practice, and he could find that out himself.
Playing COD?
COD, yes. COD. Yeah. No, COD is in Call of Duty.
Oh, right.
There you go. Come on, Will. You've played video games.
Yes, but yeah, okay. I hadn't heard it called COD, and I had some strange pictures in my head for a second.
Oh, well, yeah, you wanted to play it with a COD. Monty Python comes to mind. Anyway,
yeah, Monty Python. Yeah.
And I realized from that moment, like, it was so important to him that he could learn outside of the classroom. And I couldn't teach him all of that in the class because I couldn't personalize every single one of my students' learning. So it was about encouraging him to find ways to autonomize himself.
Harry, you just brought up a lovely word there as well, one that we haven't mentioned, and you just brought it in, and that was personalised, and that's very much as well, as you say, there's only a certain role that the teacher can play in that process, but of course the students can go home on their own and do, you know, and pursue their interests, and that's exactly what your student was doing.
And even myself as a language learner, it is well beyond the classroom where I learned the language, because I didn't need it for a certificate. I didn't want it for a certificate. I got a certificate, don't get me wrong.
Oh, well done. Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you. Thank you. But I did it because I wanted to communicate with people in the world around me. And I think at the end of the day, you know, when students realize that learning another language is more than like a need for getting a job, but it's also something that they can really want and use for things outside of just the certificate, it will really drive that autonomous learning desire.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, totally agree.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got before we finish, we've got 2 minutes. Russell, can we do a quick fire?
Yeah, well, of questions. Yeah, have you got some questions?
We got some questions.
Please.
Can we just do a quick fire?
That'd be great. Go on then.
Let's just try and answer everyone's questions.
Go on then.
Just before the questions, we've had lots of comments about gaming. I completely agree. I mean, there's so much to be learned. Like Twitch streams are so popular. They're great, really great resources for people learning, like teenagers. Anyway, question 1. Could you please recommend an online training course on gamification in ELT? Many thanks, Elena.
It's not my area, so I'm hoping you guys might know. I don't play computer games at all, so I know nothing about them.
Well,
I'm not
naturally computer games. It's on it's gamifying learning, not necessarily a game.
I don't really, honestly, I'm afraid I don't know a course on that particular subject. Sorry.
Online training course game. I mean, I'd recommend looking at Nile. Maybe Nile.
Yeah, Nile would probably be the best place to go, but I don't know. I mean, I do quite a lot of work with Nile, but I'm not sure that they run a course on gamification of learning.
Not specifically.
But certainly have a look.
Harry?
I don't know. I'm just gonna go straight up with it. I don't know, I'm afraid, but I'm gonna research it, and we'll come back to Elena on that one. The next question is from Philip, and he wants to know where he can learn deeper for YouTube or Google Translate skills.
Learn deeper, you mean?
Deeper. Go deeper into it so he can know more. How can he really use YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, there are actually videos on my website where I've gone through 10 things that you can do with YouTube. So I go into things like playlists and subscribing to channels. I'm actually going to put out a video now. I'll tell you one thing that YouTube does is incredible, is that you can set up a channel for everything. All right, so I have a channel for playing the guitar. I have another channel for studying Polish. I have another channel for AI. I have another channel for Spanish. And what you do is you set up your channel. So you have multiple channels. And when I go into my Spanish channel, all my playlists, all my history, all the videos I watch, all my subscriptions are all connected to that one thing. And if you go to my guitar, it will be completely different. So I've learned to build up specific channels on the different subjects that I'm interested in. Because what most people do is they just put it all together in one big chat, in one big YouTube channel. They've got all their stuff there. But you can actually on YouTube have it's like a profile, really, a channel. You can have multiple profiles. Yeah. So I have a profile for every single thing I do. That is a game changer in terms of being organized in your learning. Yeah?
And that's all connected to your same subscription.
Yeah, if you just
80,000 in amongst all of those channels.
Yeah, so, I mean, no, there's obviously a channel specifically for teachertrainingvideos.com. That's it. Each channel is developed for, so that's the channel where I put up my content. But, other channels are really for me, where I've got, videos that I like around guitar or videos I like around Polish. But certainly if you were to go onto teachertrainingvideos.com, there is a section on YouTube and you'll find I think it's scroll down on the front page. There's a video that's 10 things that you can use YouTube for language learning. Okay. That's quite useful.
Brilliant. I've just shared your website in the chat box, everyone. So Russell's got teachertrainingvideos.com. It's an excellent website. It's a free resource for the most part, Russell. It looks completely free.
It's all free. The only thing that obviously people can buy into is if they want extra training with me and they want to meet me on a monthly basis, then there's something called Patreon. And if you join
Okay.
Patreon, it's only $6 and you get training with me every month.
Amazing. Well, I mean, with Patreon, that'd be even better. But if you want to see what Russell does at first, it's a fantastic resource, especially if you're looking to get into digital learning. There's loads of stuff there. Okay, next question. This isn't very quick fire because you've got a lot to say about it.
Slow fire questions.
Slow fire. All right, final slow fire. Then we've got to stop, I think. Could you share some websites that create educational games for students like Kahoot or Quizzes? Any more game sort of websites?
Well, I mean, the outstanding one, and it's one of the most, it's wordwall.net. And wordwall.net has just got loads and it's got 30 something activities, and that really is very good. Another alternative to, for example, using Quizzes or Kahoot, I definitely would recommend wordwall.net is one called Socrative.com. Socrative.com. It's kind of nice because it has Socrative, yeah, as in Socrates, yeah, Socrative.com. And it's nice because the students can be doing quizzes and doing activities, but they're in a race. So obviously the person who wins the race is the person that answers the most correct questions. That can be quite nice as an alternative. And it has a free option as well.
There's also Blookit, which has a whole bunch of different games and stuff like that. And you know, when we look at these games websites, people often think, oh, that's going to be too childish for my teens or whatever. I'll tell you what, I was doing a NILE course this summer with some people that were not teens. They were, in fact, fully grown adults, and it was certainly not too kiddish for them. So when, you know, you have that element of maybe competitiveness or something, you know, it's never going to be too childish. It's never going to be too childish. It's so much fun.
Okay, so I think if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen now.
I do mind. I don't mind.
I'm going to do it anyway. I'm doing it anyway, Harry. You get like this. You start getting angry because we've got to finish in a minute.
I don't want to finish.
Don't get angry, Harry.
I'm angry, Harry.
Okay, I'm going to wait until everyone can see that. Don't be angry, Harry.
Okay, I'm less angry now.
Whoops. How do you go full screen? It's my first time. We've recently moved to Teams. We've recently moved to Teams, and I'm struggling with Teams.
Don't say that.
Russell, any advice on where to learn how to?
You're on. I can see you, and I can see on the screen that it's all there.
It's all there,
but it's not full. It's not quite full screen. I like it being full screen. Not
it's almost full screen.
That's going to have to do. That's going to happen.
All your.
But there's no. I haven't got. There's no other tabs. You can see my bookmarks. There you go. My life's up there. You can see my life story now. You got my bookmarks. All right. So as you saw during Russell's presentation, he showed you me, Macmillan Education Everywhere. That is Macmillan's solution to digital learning in the classroom and obviously outside of the classroom. It's got everything you would expect from a learning platform. This year, a couple of people in the chat box, I think I've already mentioned, some people have used Me 2.0. That came out. It's already available in most countries. It's not available everywhere. I think pretty much everyone's got it now. If you haven't got it now, you'll get it within the next 8 weeks or something, and then it's all rolling out to the whole world. This really is a game changer. So Me 1.0 was, of course, very good. It was a good solution. As we all know, as we've discussed, technology advances, it evolves, it gets better and better. So Me 2.0 really makes the best of how technology has advanced in the latest years and what is expected of teachers nowadays. Little show of hands. Let's have a show of hands. Who here?
Here's my hand.
Not your hand, Harry.
Oh, you wanted me to show you my hand?
I need virtual hands in the chat box.
Okay.
Who here uses a Macmillan course? These webinars are not just, we don't discriminate here. These webinars are for everybody who wants to come. We don't discriminate if you decide to use, a lesser product from another publisher. You're very welcome to. But who here uses Macmillan products? Great. So you have got access to this. If you're using a course which is kind of still in which you can still purchase. Obviously, older courses, I don't think we've got it on Me 2.0. The newer courses are all on Me 2.0. if you're not using digital classrooms, please, please register your students onto this platform. It is free. We don't need any more money from you. You've got your code. Just go on there and use it. It's there. It's a resource that you can use. And I hope Russell's spiel earlier about it persuaded you that it's something you should at least log on to have a look.